She told me she needed space on a Tuesday. Not even dramatically. Just tossed it out there while folding a bath towel like she was commenting on the weather. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, lacing up my shoes, not even knowing that my life was already smoldering beneath my feet. I asked her what she meant by space. She looked up, paused, then shrugged and said, "I don't know, just breathing room." We lived in a 5-bedroom house. What kind of space was she missing? For the next few days, she moved around like a ghost that had forgotten it died. Not angry, not sad, just distant in a way that didn't feel like silence but like a curtain drawn over something I wasn't meant to see. And I didn't push. I wish I had. I played it cool, tried to act like maybe this was just a phase, like maybe it was her job or the weather or whatever excuse men use when they don't want to admit their wife might be slipping through their fingers. That Friday, she didn't come home. No warning. No call. Midnight came and went. I sat in the dark in the living room, TV muted, our dog asleep at my feet, watching the headlights that weren't hers sweep across the living room wall. She came back at 4:07 a.m. Her hair was messed up, not in that casual wind-blown way, but in that someone's hands have been here way. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. She didn't say anything either. She walked past me like I was furniture. Next morning, she made coffee. My mug. My favorite blend. She even added the stupid little cinnamon sprinkle I liked. Set it on the counter and said, "I think we should talk." But I didn't want coffee. I wanted answers. Instead, I got a performance. She told me she'd been thinking for a while that we weren't aligned anymore. That she didn't feel seen. That life with me felt predictable, like she already knew the script and was tired of reading it. Her words weren't angry. They weren't even sad. They were clinical, like she'd been rehearsing them in front of a mirror for weeks. Maybe she had. I asked her, flat out, if there was someone else. She blinked. Just once. That tiny, involuntary flicker told me everything. "No," she said. I nodded. Not because I believed her, but because I suddenly realized I didn't need her to admit it. Her lie tasted like cold metal in my mouth, and I let it sit there for a long minute before I spoke again. "Then this is about you," I said. "Not me." That got under her skin. She hated not being the victim in the story. "I just want a divorce," she said. Clean. Simple. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't rage. I just looked at her and said, "Okay." Her face twitched. Just for a second. Like she expected a scene. Maybe she wanted one. Maybe she needed to see me break to feel justified. But I didn't give her that. She packed a bag that night. One suitcase. She didn't even take her favorite jacket. The green leather one I surprised her with on her birthday in Aspen. I found it 2 days later still hanging in the hallway closet like it was waiting for someone who no longer existed. And just like that, she was gone. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that leaving wasn't the final move. It was just the beginning of the unraveling. Because when she walked out that door, she left the mask behind. And it didn't take long for the truth to come crawling out from the cracks. That's when everything changed. And not for her the way she thought. 3 days after she left, I got a call from our joint bank. They were flagging a suspicious charge. 2 plane tickets to Miami, purchased on a card she wasn't supposed to be using anymore. The one we'd agreed was for house expenses only. I hadn't touched that account since she walked out. I didn't say much on the phone. Just thanked them, hung up, and stared at the wall for 10 solid minutes. Miami. We hadn't been to Miami since our 2nd anniversary. She hated the humidity. Said it made her hair feel like regret. So who was worth sweating for? Curiosity? No. This was no longer curiosity. This was war dressed in quiet patience. That night, I opened her laptop. She left it behind like it was nothing, like there weren't 7 years of digital footprints etched into its hard drive. She never logged out of anything too confident, too careless. Or maybe she thought I was too soft to ever go looking. I opened her email first. Nothing. Then I checked her deleted folder. That's where I found him. Derek. His name showed up in emails going back 6 months. Hotel confirmations. Dinner reservations. An EV to a friend's party in another state where I was, apparently, never meant to be. One message in particular clung to me like a vice. Last night was unreal. You make me forget I have a whole life back home. Counting down the days. Unreal. I didn't feel anger. Not then. I felt something worse, disgust. Not just with her, but with myself. Because I started replaying all the nights she came home and kissed me on the mouth with his breath still on her. All the times I rubbed her shoulders after work while she probably texted him under the table. The worst part? She didn't even cover her tracks well. She didn't care to. That's how little I mattered in the end. Like I was just a bookmark holding her place in a story she stopped reading a long time ago. I didn't tell her I knew. Not yet. I waited. For more days passed before she reached out. A text. Cold. Formal. She wanted to meet for lunch. To discuss next steps. I picked the spot, an outdoor cafe near downtown. Somewhere public. Not because I thought I'd lose my cool, but because I wanted her to see the kind of calm that only comes when you've already buried someone in your head. She showed up in sunglasses too big for her face, like they could hide the new version of her that had crawled out in my absence. She wore lipstick I'd never seen before and smiled like she hadn't just set fire to our lives. We sat. She opened with small talk. I didn't respond. Finally, she leaned in and said, "Look, I know this is hard." I cut her off. "Does Derek know you're still using our money?" She froze. You know that sound when the wind completely dies and you realize how loud silence really is? That was the cafe for a full 3 seconds. "Excuse me," she asked, but her voice was already betraying her. "You heard me. Miami? 2 tickets. Our account. Remember that one?" She blinked slowly, calculating, adjusting. "You went through my stuff?" "Not nearly as thoroughly as I could have." She leaned back. That defensive posture, arms crossed, jaw tightening. The same posture she used when she knew she was cornered but didn't want to admit it. "You said we'd keep things clean," she snapped. "You said a lot of things. Like how there was no one else. I didn't think it mattered anymore. There it was. That tone. That you should have known better tone. Like I was the problem for not anticipating betrayal." I stood up. "You want clean? Here's clean. You get nothing." She stood too, almost knocking her chair over. "You can't do that." "Oh, I can. And I will." Her voice cracked then, just a hairline fracture. But it was enough. "This doesn't have to get ugly." "But it already is," I said. "And you started it." She walked away first, this time not nearly as confident as when she walked out of our house. Her steps were uneven, her face tight. She knew. She finally knew. The mask was gone. And all that was left behind it was the echo of a lie that didn't land the way she thought it would. And I was just getting started. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the cracks to start showing. After our little cafe encounter, I made one call to a lawyer I'd met years ago at a poker night I wasn't even supposed to attend. Back then we just talked about football and cigars. Now we were talking about asset division, spousal support, and what I could legally freeze without needing her permission. Turns out, quite a bit. Within days, she was locked out of everything that mattered. The credit cards, cut. The shared streaming services, logged out. Even her gym membership canceled. Not because I was being petty. Because I was done paying for her to keep pretending she still lived in the world we built together while treating it like a motel she could check out of whenever she got bored. She sent me an email 3 days later. Just one line. Was that really necessary? I didn't respond. I wanted her to feel it. Every inch of what she chose. I wanted the silence to speak louder than I ever could. But the real twist came on a random Thursday. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity has claws. "Is this Ryan?" a voice asked. "Yes." "Who's this?" "This is." I don't even know how to say this. "My name is Melissa. I'm Derek's wife." I didn't say a word. My throat closed up, then burned its way open again. She continued, voice brittle. "I found your number in his messages. I think we should talk." We met the next day at a neutral spot, same cafe, oddly enough. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, hair up in a loose bun, eyes rimmed red like she'd stopped sleeping a week ago. She looked like someone who'd had her entire reality pulled out from under her and was still trying to balance on air. We shared timelines. And that's when the full weight of it hit me. Ashley hadn't just cheated. She'd been a parasite in someone else's marriage, too. Melissa and Derek had a 3-year-old daughter. They were supposed to be planning a move to Denver. Ashley knew all of it. And still, she smiled in photos with the kid, helped plan the move, even suggested schools. Melissa showed me screenshots, texts that made me want to throw the table over. My favorite? A message Ashley sent to Derek 2 days before she left me. Once he lets me go, we can finally breathe. I just need him to hand me the keys to my freedom. Not a word about love. Just keys. Like I was the gatekeeper of her prison. When I told Melissa about the plane tickets and the hotel reservations, her face went blank. Turns out, he told her he was traveling solo for business. She thought he was pitching to investors. We sat there, 2 strangers connected by betrayal, not even sure what to do with all the truth we just scraped together. She cried once. Quietly. I didn't. I just sat there, hands and fists under the table, wondering how many versions of Ashley existed that I'd never met. Melissa looked at me through swollen eyes and said, "You know, when my husband told me he wanted a divorce, I didn't argue. I let him go. But not long after, he realized the real price of that choice." Those words stayed with me long after she left. Because that's the thing about people like Ashley and Derek. They think jumping ship is freedom. But freedom has a cost. And soon, both of them were going to start paying it. In ways they never expected. A week after my meeting with Melissa, I got a text from Ashley at 1:14 a.m. No greeting. No explanation. Just, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. At 1:21, she followed up, "Please, it's important." Still nothing. By 1:37, the messages turned sharp. "Are you seriously ignoring me now?" "Wow." 2:02, she called. I let it ring. By the morning, I had 7 missed calls and a final text that said, "You're being childish. I'm still entitled to respect." That word, entitled, rang in my head like a church bell made of poison. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me, or felt guilty. No, she was reaching out because she'd finally realized something. The ground under her was no longer solid. The house she ran to wasn't built to last. And just as I suspected, it didn't take long before the real fallout began. It started subtle. I overheard it first, through a mutual friend who didn't realize I was within earshot at a neighborhood gathering. She was talking to someone about Ashley's little situation. Apparently Derek had ghosted her. Flat out disappeared. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. No Miami. No new life. Just silence. She'd quit her job the week she left me. Said she was done working in a place that suffocated her potential. Now she had no income, no apartment lease signed, and a string of maxed out cards she couldn't access anymore. And Derek? He was back in Melissa's house, tail between his legs, repackaging himself as a changed man. Ashley had been played by the very man she'd weaponized against me. And watching her fall apart from the outside felt like poetic justice. But that wasn't the satisfying part. The real satisfaction came 2 days later when she showed up. Unannounced. Standing on the front porch wearing that same green jacket she left behind like she thought it might rewind time. I didn't open the door right away. I just looked at her through the glass. She knocked once. Then again. Louder. When I finally opened it, she blinked like she didn't expect to see me looking so fine. That must have stung. "Can we talk?" she said. I stepped aside. Not because I forgave her, but because I wanted to hear it. I wanted to watch the crash happen with my own eyes. She walked in slowly, taking in the room like it was a stranger's house. Like something sacred had been taken from her. "I made a mistake," she said, standing in the middle of the living room like a lost tourist. I didn't answer. "I thought I was walking into something better," she continued. "But he lied to me. He said he was done with Melissa, that he was going to build a life with me. And now he's gone." I finished for her. She looked up sharply. "You knew. I had lunch with Melissa." Her face cracked. Just a flicker. "But it was enough." "You told her?" she hissed. "She told me." We connected the dots. Turns out we were both living inside someone else's fantasy. Ashley sat down, uninvited, and buried her face in her hands. "I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered. I thought maybe we could talk. Maybe work through this." And just like that, there it was, the gall. The audacity to burn a bridge and then beg for shelter on the ashes. I sat down across from her, leaned forward, and looked her in the eyes. "You didn't just leave, Ashley. You detonated everything. You lied, you stole, and you tried to rewrite the story with someone else before our chapter was even done." She tried to speak. I raised my hand. "No, you don't get to cry here. You don't get to ask for comfort from the man you betrayed." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person in front of her anymore. "Good. That's because I wasn't him anymore." I stood up. "You have 5 minutes to collect yourself. After that, I want you out of this house." Her mouth fell open, but nothing came out. For minutes later, she left. Jacket zipped to the chin. Head down. No final words. Just the sound of the door clicking shut behind her. And this time, I didn't feel a thing. 3 days after she walked out of my house for the second time, this time not so triumphantly, her version of events started making the rounds. It began with a cryptic Facebook post: "Some people don't appreciate what they have until you're gone. Funny how quick they are to rewrite the past when you stop playing their perfect little role." I left to save myself. "That's not betrayal, that's survival." The comments poured in. "You're so strong. People change. You deserve happiness. Proud of you for choosing you." I sat there, scrolling, watching her cast herself as the misunderstood heroine in a story where she lit the house on fire and then cried because it was warm. What she didn't realize is that people talk. And while she was busy assembling her support group of blind loyalists and wine moms, the real story started leaking through the cracks. First, her old coworker hit me up on Instagram. Apparently, Ashley had been bragging about Derek for months behind closed doors. She called him her upgrade. She used phrases like, "When I finally escape," and "Ryan's too safe for me." Said she was just waiting for the right time to trade out her old life for one that felt more exciting. Another message came from someone I didn't even recognize, a friend of Melissa's. She sent screenshots of a group chat Ashley was in, mocking me, calling me predictable, soft, too comfortable, bragging about how easy it was to manipulate my trust. One message in particular punched me right in the gut. "He thinks being loyal makes him valuable." How boring is that? Boring. I stared at that word for what felt like hours. Like being faithful, being steady, being there somehow made me unworthy. But it was also the moment I stopped giving a damn about what she said or who believed it. Because while she was busy spinning a narrative, I was already a dozen moves ahead. I called my lawyer and had him draft a formal statement for her to sign, relinquishing any claim to the house, the car, and the remaining joint savings. Legally, I had more than enough proof to make it stick. Financial infidelity. Unauthorized charges. A documented affair. I could have dragged her through court for months. But I didn't want revenge through bureaucracy. I wanted her to see that the life she tried to destroy didn't crumble. It evolved without her. The next twist came faster than I expected. She showed up at my office. Yes, my office. Middle of the day, wearing oversized sunglasses like she was someone worth hiding. Marched right past the receptionist and demanded to speak to me as a human being. I didn't get up. I just told security to escort her out. Calmly. No shouting. No drama. Let her be the one making the scene. 10 minutes later, she was gone. And so was whatever sympathy I had left. I got an email that night. Subject line: "Last chance to be civil." Body: "You want to punish me, fine. You've made that clear. But don't forget that I know things too. You're not perfect. Maybe we both need to start talking." That was her play? Threats? I didn't respond. But I saved the email. Every word. The next morning, she started calling mutual friends. Spinning new versions. This time, I was emotionally abusive. Cold. Unavailable. Said I neglected her. That I isolated her with my expectations. That I treated her like a possession. But what she didn't know is that people remember. People watched our life unfold over the years. They saw who showed up to birthday parties, who planned anniversaries, Who cleaned the house when she forgot to? Who sat with her dad for hours when he was in the hospital? They knew who had their hands in the fire and who stood back complaining about the heat. Slowly, the sympathy she manufactured started dissolving. People stopped replying. A few reached out to me, apologizing for even entertaining her side. One of them, her own cousin, said she thought she was walking into a better story. Turns out she was just the villain in someone else's happy ending. And here's the truth. I wasn't perfect. I know that. But I was present. I was loyal. I was real. And the more she tried to tear me down to make her exit look noble, the more the world saw her for what she really was, a woman who traded stability for chaos only to find out the chaos didn't want her either. And now? She's out there still trying to tell the story. But no one's listening anymore. 2 months after she walked out the second time, I got a certified letter from her. Not an email. Not a text. A letter. Like we were in the 1800s and she was writing from the battlefield. It was written in this syrupy, manipulative tone, equal parts victim and martyr. She claimed she wasn't trying to cause trouble but felt she had no choice but to pursue what she called a fair outcome. She wanted to renegotiate the divorce terms. The ones she signed without blinking. Translation: Derek was gone, her money was gone, and now she was looking for lifeboats. She claimed she was entitled to partial ownership of the house. That she contributed emotionally to its growth. That the years she spent supporting me while I built my career had value. And I agreed with one thing, those years did have value. But she spent the last 6 months torching that value like kindling. I didn't even get mad. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the desperation had finally caught up with her. The mask was slipping, and the woman who once floated through rooms like she was too good for gravity was now clawing for scraps of a life she threw away. I sent her a response through my lawyer. 1 paragraph. No emotion. Just the facts. She'd signed a post-nuptial agreement 3 years ago. Her idea, ironically, back when she still wanted to look mature and independent. It waived her claim to the house, the savings, and the car. She was entitled to nothing. The silence after that was beautiful. But silence doesn't mean stillness. What came next was chaos, just not for me. Melissa reached out again. She'd had enough of Derek's redemption tour. After weeks of pretending he was a changed man, she caught him again. Different woman, same patterns. She kicked him out for good, changed the locks, and sent a mass message to friends and family exposing everything. She named names, posted screenshots, and ended with one brutal line: Ashley and Derek are not victims. They're architects of their own destruction. That post went viral in our town. Not celebrity-level viral, but enough. People started resharing it. Screenshots spread. Ashley's phone lit up like a slot machine of shame. Her reputation, so carefully crafted over the years, came apart thread by thread. She lost friends. Invitations stopped. A couple of her oldest friends told her not to contact them again. Too much lying, too much manipulation. One even texted me an apology. Then came the final blow. She showed up at my door again. Not to talk. To plead. This time, no green jacket. No makeup. Just her, raw and panicked like life had peeled her open. I don't have anyone left, she said. You're the only person who ever actually cared about me. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, taking in the woman who once walked out like she had the whole world waiting for her. She stepped closer. Can't we just talk? Try again? You said you'd always be there. And that's when I finally told her the truth. I was there, I said. Through everything. Until you decided I was just the background in your big scene. Until you took my loyalty and turned it into a joke. You don't get to come back from that. Not here. Her lip trembled. She reached out. I didn't flinch. She whispered, I didn't think you'd ever stop loving me. And I answered, I didn't stop. I just stopped pretending it mattered. She left for real this time. No parting words. No more drama. Just the slow walk of someone who finally understood the price of their own arrogance. And I stood there, not triumphant, but free. The following weeks were strange. It wasn't relief that I felt when Ashley finally walked out for the last time. It was quiet. A silence that echoed louder than any argument we ever had. The kind of quiet that settles in after something big shifts, like the world's been rearranged and you're left trying to find your footing in a new version of it. I focused on work, drowned myself in it, actually. I became a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. The version that existed before her. The version that had goals beyond surviving someone else's temper tantrums and emotional games. I didn't even recognize the guy I saw in the mirror some mornings, but it felt good. Stronger. More certain. I made a habit of hitting the gym before work. I started cooking again, something I used to do for us before it turned into an obligation. Every night, I had dinner by myself at the kitchen table. No distractions. Just me, my thoughts, and the life I was reclaiming. But there were still ghosts, small ones. The memories of her were like shadows in every corner. The way she used to walk into the kitchen and ask if I was going to help with dinner. But never really helped. Just hovered. Like her presence was enough. The way she'd lean against the doorframe while I worked. Pretending to care about my projects but clearly thinking about something else. Those ghosts were there. But they were fading. Each day they took up a little less space. Then came the phone call. It was from Melissa. I hadn't heard from her since the dust settled with Derek. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe an update on how she was managing life without the circus that had been her marriage. "I've got some news," she said. "I think you need to know." I tensed the same way someone braces for impact. She was calm, too calm. That never boded well. "What's going on?" I asked, already knowing it was something bad. Or at least something Ashley-related. "There's this guy," she began. "A friend of Derek's. Apparently, Ashley didn't just burn her bridge with you. She's been playing a game with everyone." I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. Turns out, she didn't leave Derek because of the affair. She left because she wanted out of the mess she created, just like she always does. But the thing is, she didn't want to be caught. Not by you, not by him. So, she decided to frame it as a big emotional awakening. Like she was the martyr. You know how she is. I swallowed. I was already hearing the pieces come together, the way her stories about herself started to crack under pressure. She was planning to leave before all of this happened. She was already talking to someone else. Someone before Derek. Melissa continued. I just didn't know the whole story until I saw the messages. I leaned back, my mind spinning with the implications. Another man. Another lie she'd built her life on. She was always a step ahead. Wasn't she? I muttered, half to myself. I just never saw it. You weren't the one she was playing, Melissa said. We both were. She was always looking for the next thing, the next upgrade. It wasn't about being in love with him. It was about the chase. I laughed bitterly. It's funny, isn't it? The things we'll do to get away from the real problems just to avoid facing what we've destroyed. Melissa was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. She's really good at making people think she's the victim. But I'm done with her, Ryan. I think you should be too. I didn't need to hear anything else. I'm done. That's when the last of the ghosts finally slipped away like a door closing softly behind them. No more lingering thoughts. No more what-ifs. The closure I'd been waiting for didn't come in the form of some big dramatic confrontation or even her apology. It came in the realization that I wasn't the only one who had been played. And that, in the end, she wasn't the only one with a story to tell. That's when I knew I was free. The next few weeks were about reclaiming my peace. I met some new people, but nothing serious. I was in no rush to fill the space she left behind. Instead, I started looking inward at the parts of me that had been dulled for so long. Things I'd pushed aside for her, my love for writing, the way I used to sketch in the margins of notebooks, how I used to go hiking alone just to think. I began to trust myself again without needing someone to validate it. And then, one Saturday afternoon, I ran into someone unexpected, Maya, an old friend from college I hadn't seen in years. She was in town for a conference and we just clicked. Not because of any rush to jump into something new, but because we both understood what it meant to rebuild after everything fell apart. It wasn't a relationship waiting to happen. It was two people who understood that growth comes from pain, but not the kind of pain that comes from betrayal. The kind that comes from choosing to move forward. We talked for hours. About everything. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. I didn't have to pretend. Ashley's story, her manipulation, her lies. All of it faded into the background. It wasn't that I forgave her, because forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about choosing to let go. I was letting go, and I was better for it. Autumn came early that year. The air shifted, the kind of chill that wraps around you just enough to remind you that time keeps moving, whether you're ready or not. I remember stepping outside one morning, coffee in hand, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like something was missing. No echo of a voice in the kitchen, no ghost of footsteps in the hallway. Just me, the cold, and the beginning of a season I didn't hate anymore. Ashley hadn't contacted me in over a month. Not a text, not a phone call, not even one of those sad, indirect social media posts she loved so much. Her silence wasn't peace, it was defeat. And I had no interest in poking the ashes to see if anything was still burning. But life, of course, had other plans. It was a Thursday afternoon when I saw her again. I was walking out of the bookstore, something I'd gotten into again, oddly enough, when I caught a glimpse of her across the street. She didn't see me at first. She was sitting alone at a bus stop, bundled in a coat that didn't look like hers. Face tired. I scanning her phone like it might save her. She looked small. And not the physical kind of small. The emotional kind. The kind of small you become when everything you use to weaponize your charm, your confidence, your people are all gone. She looked like someone trying not to be seen. I didn't cross the street. I just watched. Because something inside me needed to see it, not out of cruelty, but for confirmation. To know that I hadn't imagined it all. That she really was that far gone. That I wasn't crazy for thinking she'd always been running from something even before she ran from me. A week later, her cousin reached out again. Apparently, Ashley had moved in with her parents. Temporarily, of course. Just until things stabilize. Except nothing had. She hadn't found work. She was bouncing between couch surfing and occasional consulting gigs that barely paid. And Derek? He was out of state now. New job. New woman. Same lies. She still talks about you, her cousin said. Not directly. But she brings up the house. The way you made coffee. The smell of your car. It's like she's living in rewind. That didn't make me feel good. It didn't make me feel bad either. It made me feel done. I thanked her cousin, said I wished Ashley well, which was the truth, but not the kind she'd want to hear, and hung up. The next day, I saw Maya again. We didn't plan it. She was back in town for a short while, staying with friends, and we met up for lunch. Easy, casual, no pressure. But the conversation that unfolded over that hour, it made me pause. She told me about the time she almost married someone who looked perfect on paper. Good job. Kind voice. Made all the right moves. But she said something felt off, like she was only seeing the version of him he wanted to be, not who he really was. She ended it 3 weeks before the wedding. Sometimes people fall in love with the idea of being adored, she said. But not the responsibility that comes with being loved. That line hit me like a freight train. Because that was Ashley. She didn't want love, she wanted worship. Attention. Devotion without expectation. The moment she felt seen too clearly, the moment she felt someone might hold her to her own words, she disappeared. And I'd spent years calling that love. Maya smiled at me then, gently. You ever think maybe the kind of heartbreak clears the way for something real? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have one. But because I did, and it was too big for words. After lunch, I went home and walked through my house like I was seeing it for the first time. The walls felt taller. The windows brighter. Not because anything had changed, but because I had. I walked into the kitchen, made a cup of coffee, no cinnamon this time. Just black, clean, strong. I stood there and drank it, feeling the quiet hum of my new life settling in. Ashley once said I was too safe, too stable, too predictable. But maybe safety isn't boring. Maybe it's peace. And peace, as it turns out, is priceless. It was a regular Tuesday, the kind that used to blend into all the others when life felt like a loop. But something about this one felt different. Not dramatic, not sudden, just quietly significant. I'd woken up without checking my phone. No rush, no dread, just sunlight pouring through the curtains and the sound of the world waking up. I made coffee not out of habit but because I wanted to. I even sat down with a notebook and started sketching again. Something I hadn't done since long before everything collapsed. There was no voice in the back of my head anymore telling me what needed fixing, what I'd done wrong. how I could be better. The silence wasn't empty now. It was full. And I realized then, with almost painful clarity, that I hadn't just escaped a toxic relationship. I'd been reborn by surviving it. Peace didn't come like a sunrise. Came in pieces, in little choices. Not checking Ashley's social media. Not explaining my side of the story to people who didn't matter. Not defending myself against accusations made by someone who never knew me. Not reaching out when the nights were quiet and the memories crept in. And through all of it, something stronger than anger or sadness took root. Purpose. It started simple. Volunteering on weekends at a local community center. Teaching art to kids who didn't have anyone telling them they were good at anything. There was this one boy, Eli, 9 years old, barely spoke. But he'd draw with this intensity like the paper owed him something. I saw a bit of myself in him. A quiet kind of pain. But also a fire. Helping him didn't just distract me. It healed something. Gave weight to the days that used to feel hollow. Then came an offer. One of the center's coordinators asked if I'd consider running a weekly class. Just something informal. Maybe call it creative therapy. Not therapy in the licensed sense, but healing through expression, through story, through shared silence. I said yes before I even thought it through. Because that was the thing about building a new life, it didn't come with blueprints. Came with choices. I ran into Maya again that same week. This time, we didn't talk in passing. She invited me to her gallery opening. I didn't hesitate. I went. And when I walked into that space and saw her surrounded by people, by light, by art, something clicked. We weren't becoming something. We already were something. Not rushed. Not defined. Just real. She walked over, drink in hand, and said, "You look lighter." I nodded. I am. We didn't talk about Ashley. We didn't need to. Maya wasn't a rebound. She wasn't a replacement. She was a witness to the man I'd become after. That night, walking back to my car, I thought about all the things I used to believe made life meaningful: routine, stability, partnership. And how easily those things can be twisted when they're built around the wrong person. Ashley once called me predictable. But it wasn't predictability that broke us, it was her hunger for chaos. For escape. For drama that made her feel alive but left everything else scorched. She ran from stability and found destruction. I stayed. I rebuilt. And in the quiet, something beautiful took shape. Me. Not the man she needed me to be. Not the man I thought I had to become to keep her. But the man who emerged after the fire charred, maybe. But stronger. Sharper. Whole. One more part left. It's been almost a year now. Funny how time doesn't just heal, it redefines. The things that once haunted me now feel like a dream I outgrew. Not because they didn't matter, but because I do. That's the difference. Ashley never came back, not really. There were a few more feeble attempts. A forwarded quote about forgiveness. A birthday message that felt more like an obligation than a genuine gesture. Each one got the same response from me. Nothing. Because I learned the value of my silence. Not all closure comes with an apology. Sometimes it comes in the form of indifference. When you no longer feel the need to convince anyone of what you lived through, or beg someone to acknowledge the wreckage they left behind. That's when you've really healed, when their name feels like just a word. No weight, no sting. I kept the green jacket she left behind. Not because I wanted a piece of her, but because it reminds me of something important. People show you who they are in the things they discard. She left the jacket without a thought, just like she tried to leave me. But here's the thing, I didn't crumble. She thought letting go of me would set her free. What she didn't realize was that I was the one holding the net. The stability. The loyalty. The home. When my wife said she wanted a divorce, I didn't argue, I let her go. But not long after, she realized the real price of that choice. And it was a price she hadn't calculated. A future she didn't get to have. And me? I've moved on. Not just from her, but from who I was around her. I live differently now. More deliberately. I say no more often. I surround myself with people who speak in truths, not half-promises wrapped in charm. I spend my mornings walking, writing, teaching, creating. And Maya? She's still around. Not as some poetic ending. Not as a trophy for surviving heartbreak, but as a partner. Real, present, beautiful in ways that have nothing to do with surface and everything to do with presence. We're not rushing anything. We're not building castles in the air. We're just existing together in honesty. If you're reading this and you're in the middle of the storm, thinking about how much it hurts, how unfair it is, how broken you feel, let me tell you something. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were just giving your love to someone who mistook devotion for weakness. Someone who confused comfort with captivity. Someone who saw your steady heart and mistook it for something to conquer rather than cherish. Let them go. Let them run. And then do something wild. Stay. Stay in your own skin long enough to rebuild. Stay grounded. Stay kind. Stay open but smarter. Stronger. Sharper. One day you'll wake up and realize the fire didn't destroy you. It forged you. This is the end of the story. But for me, it was just the beginning.